Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for the prayerful pause of the pastor today. I have another reading from a book that I've lifted up before. It's White Privilege Pop Quiz. And remember, there are no right or wrong answers to this. It's just said to kind of raise our awareness. Okay? Here's the question. How often have you been given safety instructions about walking through a department store or public establishment so that you don't foster suspicion or attract attention? Let me read that again. How often have you been given safety instructions about walking through a department store or a public establishment so that you don't foster suspicion or attract attention? Frequently? Sometimes? Rarely? Never? The author writes, once again, there is a good chance that if you answered number 4, which was never, then you are intimately familiar with privilege and probably don't have a follow-up story about how your family warned you against looking suspicious. Whenever I ask the above question in a room where non-white people are present, the first-person narratives are plentiful. Most black and brown people can immediately conjure up an incident, quite often an event from earlier that day, that involves being forewarned by parents, guardians, or other loved ones about being followed, raising suspicion, or just attracting unwanted attention in a department store or public place. Most people have been schooled, she says, on what is acceptable for acceptable behavior for inside or outside the home. There is a significant difference between being educated in proper behavior or etiquette and being warned against looking suspicious. If you are a non-white male living within a cultural mindset that harbors expectations of deceit, danger, and criminality about people with darker skin, compounded by class and gender, it is highly possible that your very presence is perceived and interpreted as suspicious or threatening. It's not just in establishments. I know my kids, who, as you know, are women of color, they're all cautious about driving, about being stopped, even if they haven't been speeding, even if there's nothing wrong with the car. And it's not just non-white males. About 25 years ago, I was shopping with a friend of mine, beautiful, statuesque, really, black woman. And we were in a drugstore in the city, but not the heart of the city. It was in College Town along Mount Hope Avenue. So kind of on the bridge between the city and Brighton, which is a very upscale suburb. And we walked in the store with each other, but went different directions. We had different things to get, and we were on our way to lunch, so we just wanted to get our things and go. And I went over to one side, and as she walked down one aisle, I saw a woman come out, a clerk from behind the counter, and start walking after her and following her down the aisle. And I watched this, and I kept watching, and finally I just had had enough, and I went up to the clerk, and I said, "What are you following my friend for?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "You've been following my friend down the aisle and watching her. How come?" And she said, No, I haven't." I said, "Yes, you have. I've watched you go all the way down this aisle and pretend to be looking at something and then be watching her and what she's doing." I said, "I'd really like to speak with your manager." The clerk was all too happy to get the manager. She didn't want to be dealing with me anymore. So the manager came out, and he and I said the same thing. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, we've had an increase in shoplifting lately." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well," and this was true. I said, "I happen to be unemployed right now. And my friend is dean of students at thus and such a university here in town. If you were worried about anybody shoplifting, it should have been worrying about me, not about her." And we both walked out. I don't have to deal with that. She has had to deal with that all her life. She was a little uneasy. By doing that, I had placed her at risk in her mind. I mean, we had to work through that. So I don't advise you doing that with your friends of color unless you've talked about it ahead of time. I was a lot younger. I learned a lot by doing that. And it took courage for me to do that. I felt like I was standing up to racism and calling it for what it was. But underneath it all was privilege. If I had not experienced that, I wouldn't have understood that she has had that all her life. All her life. And after that experience, we had many, many, many conversations about it. So if you're going out today or tomorrow or the next day, over the weekend or whatever, stop and think about how you feel. Do you have to worry about those things? Because other people do. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor. A few moments to think of something greater than ourselves, and in this case, it is about our white privilege. I'm Pastor Deb Swift of South Presbyterian Church in Rochester, New York. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, God bless, take care, and bye for now.